Hey, folks, welcome to You'll Probably Agree. And today we are looking at a movie back and to the left again and again and again because I'm not usually a conspiracy theory guy. I think they're kind of ridiculous, most of the time. But once in a while, you do get a conspiracy theory that is actually kind of legitimate and it legitimizes all the things that you're absolutely horrified about. And what is that exactly? Oh, great. I'm going to get this off of my thingy here. I'm not even going to bother with that. So, what is that exactly? Well, what happens when kings are killed by their own government? Well, Oliver Stone's JFK looks into that. And before we get into it, Jeff York for the establishing shot. What are your thoughts on JFK and how were you introduced to the movie? Because I'm sure it's a little different than the way I was introduced to it.
Well, as our age difference shows, Mike, I saw this one in the theaters, and like Roger Ebert, I thought it was the best film of the year. Now, you can say what you want about uh, how much Oliver Stone goes far to the field and maybe throws in everything but the kitchen sink as far as what he's presenting, but by and large, it's based on fact. It's based on uh, people who were investigating this and the case that Garrison did go into the DA of New Orleans at the time, bringing a case against Clay Shaw for being part of the basically the plot to assassinate the president. That did happen. A lot of the stuff that he's shown in here is absolutely true. I think maybe the mistake that he made, and I remember thinking this when I was watching it in the theater here in Chicago, those many decades ago, that he was blending it all sort of together, that it was hard to tell sort of which end was up and which end was down. A lot of different film techniques. Cinematography won an Academy Award for Robert Richardson. I think it's one of his best jobs, but he was working with like 6 different film stocks. And it's sort of blurring the line between what is hypothesis, what is based in fact, and what is maybe pure conjecture, versus what are hard facts. But it all comes together, and I think it captures, to your very point at the beginning, the sort of paranoia and the whole sort of looking over your shoulder, worrying about how much overreach there is in the government, which has been going on for a long, long time. A lot of people were quick to discredit this when it came out. Newsweek did a cover story discrediting it before it even opened, and they hadn't even seen the final cut. They'd read the script. So that shows you, I think, how paranoid some of these institutions were that were probably connected to the government to try to make it sound like they didn't like what was going on and they were going to come out against it. The fact is, and this is the great embarrassment, I think, of America at that time, other than maybe slavery. Well, of course, slavery was the first and worst sin. But as far as in that era, the government, the press, and I dare say our sort of institutions did not do their jobs in really trying to dig deeper into this and figure out what happened. The stuff that did last, that did stick on the walls, that did prove to be suggestive of a conspiracy and the government's involvement and everything else and all that kind of stuff, was done by Joe and John and Jane Q. Public. The people who wrote the books, the people who kept it going, the people who said, hey, this doesn't make sense. Let's question this. Let's ask about it. Those people were regular citizens out there wondering what the heck was going on. And I'll just say this before wrapping this sort of opening question you had about my general statement about it. I believed it when I was a teenager and first getting into understanding what was going on with JFK and why he might not have been making too many friends in the Pentagon and places like that. And I remember when I saw this movie, I thought it was terrifically done. I mean, there's almost 2 ways to discuss this film: as a great cinematic work, as well as a absolute riveting portrayal of the paranoia of that time and a lot of the details that went into the assassination attempt. But there are too many things around the assassination attempt to just say, well, Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone. That's the end of the story. Sorry, that's not the end of the story. And this movie shows that. And for all the years after 1964, when they came out with the Warren Commission, and over 2/3 of the American public dismissed it outright. They said, this is BS. We don't believe this. Even then, before it was sort of becoming popular to have the people with the tinfoil hats and thinking everything was out to get them, America didn't buy it. And they built and built and built their case. No thanks to the press, no thanks to the government. By the time Frank Church had committee to reopen this case in '76, it was the regular Joes and Janes out there who got it to that place, not the senators, not the congressmen, not the military, not the CIA or anybody like that. They were dragged along, in some cases, kicking and screaming, and even the press. The press didn't want to cover it. They kind of failed at their core job of asking questions that they should have been, and too willingly accepting all of the, sort of cover story kind of elements and the things that didn't quite wash from the government. But God love the public. They didn't buy it from the get-go, and I think this film shows that's why that just exactly why they didn't. And Oliver Stone didn't buy it either. And I would say that even if you go through with the fine-tooth comb and say, well, that seems a little bit fudged, that's not quite right, that's embellished, that was disproven in certain ways, maybe that's a fourth of it, maybe. I can tell you, having read many books and articles and volumes of stuff about this, most of it is pretty close to accurate. I mean,
Yeah.
he's in the right ballpark, if not literally. I mean, even the big Donald Sutherland thing, which we'll get to in a little bit, but that's based on Fletcher Prouty, a real ex-CIA man who said all this to Garrison and to anybody who would listen for the next 20 years after that. Yeah, it's fudged a little bit. He didn't go to Garrison didn't go to Washington to see him, and it was done more or less after the thing. So yeah, some dramatic license is taken here, and maybe that's to the detriment of the truth-telling nature that I think Stone was setting out for and got a little bit discredited for. But it was a big hit movie. People still believe in it. It got the files to be reopened because of the popularity of the film. It was nominated for all kinds of Oscars, including Best Picture. And Roger Ebert and Jeff York picked it as their best film that year. So I think it was a great film then. It even looks better now because I think the times have caught up with them. And I'm not sure we can believe anything most of our government is telling us these days. This last week, just in a sort of microcosm of saying, don't believe your eyes, ladies and gentlemen of America. Believe the cover story that the administration is putting out. So
Yeah.
I'm a big JFK guy all the way back to my high school years, and here to you tonight, my friend.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Roger Ebert because I think he had the best summation as to why I love this movie. He had a summation of it in his autobiography, Life Itself. There was a well renowned journalist who approached him in a public place, and he said, I can't believe you gave that movie 4 stars and loved it. There's so much of it that is inaccurate. And then he said to him, well, you see, journalism is about accuracy, where movies are about feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing with JFK is that, yeah, is that movie inaccurate? Yeah, I think in a lot of ways. I don't think LBJ was behind JFK's assassination. For one thing, I don't think that Lee Harvey Oswald was not only not one of the shooters, but not a shooter at all, and was just a patsy. But again, this is just me going from common sense rather than approaching it through a conspiratorial sort of viewpoint. I just created that word, by the way.
You meant to
And
say conspiratorial.
conspiratorial. Yeah, I had a George W. Bush moment.
Strategery.
So when you they say you can't be fooled once, you can't be fooled again. Yeah, you fooled me once, you can't be fooled. Fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, shame on you. Yeah, that
Yeah,
one.
it's a pretty good imitation there, actually.
I don't know. I mean, that's the thing with Bush and Cheney when everyone's like, "Oh my God, Bush is a war criminal and he bombed Iraq." It's like, no, I think Cheney was a war criminal. I think Cheney's just like, or is there some?
Well, when they came out with the screenplay book of this, and they had incredible annotations throughout. I mean, literally putting little noted facts to then look in the back of the book to say, well, where they got this from and where they got that from, and it was
Mm-hmm.
at least credited to various books and different places like that. Now, whether we want to say is it overreach for Oliver Stone and the filmmakers here to show Jack Ruby depositing the pristine bullet on the stretcher
Oh,
in Parkland.
yeah,
Yeah,
that
I
part.
mean, those kind
Yeah.
of things I think Oliver Stone probably did go a little far. And that was based on hearsay. Somebody said, I know Jack Ruby was in there. And what was he doing there? But the fact is, Jack Ruby showed up at that midnight press conference and was answering
Mm-hmm.
questions that the press was asking Lee Harvey Oswald. Why was he there? Why was he allowed in? He's not even the press. but he's there and he's making a note of himself and answering questions. A
Yeah.
lot of the other things that went on. There was a great fact, and I don't have it with me. I should have looked it up before the show, but they uh, they did some sort of mathematical estimation on the odds of all of the people who were ended up dead from this time within the next 10 years after
Mm.
the assassination, all sort of watching one event in this place that was maybe 500 to 1,000 people all told, sort of watching in this little confined half of a mile area. And how many people had died, they asked the computer logically if they could have all died from natural causes within
Mm.
10 years of this. All different kinds of ages, all different kinds of incomes and credos and people, but they're all Dallas natives and relatives and stuff like that. And the odds were something like 30 billion to 1.
Wow.
If
Yeah.
one person out of those, I don't know, 78 witnesses who talked to the FBI who were on the grassy knoll, or some of the other people like Lee Bowers, or people who saw things from the overpass or the train yards and stuff like that, if that many people, and I forget how many people it was who died in that 10-year period, it was something fairly large. I don't want to say 70 or 80, but it might have been like 30, that people ended up, even that kind of number was astronomical. In other
Hmm.
words, it couldn't happen. So if one of those people was killed because they knew someone, like, and they're all heart attacks, and they're all
Yeah.
traffic accidents, and this person committed suicide, but he was right-handed and he shot himself in the head with the left hand. Well, that doesn't make any sense. There's
Yeah.
literally those kind of things across this movie, across most books that people try to discredit, that don't work. But what I love is this movie has from the very get-go, when Martin Sheen is narrating,
Hmm.
how we got to this point, and then it just kicks in with all these cuts, and you introduce Jack Lemmon and Ed Asner and Sally Kirkland and Kevin Bacon and all these people, and it just moves, and there's just, you're tense and yet excited on the edge of your seat from the very get-go all the way to the end of an almost 3-hour movie, and it's fascinating. And um,
Yeah.
job.
That's a brilliant thing they
People
did with it.
excited, and it got the files open so we could find out more about it. And sure enough, we found out that a lot of the stuff that Stone presented is true. Indeed, at the very end, Clay Shaw was found culpable of lying in his trial about not having any connections to the CIA. Now, does that mean that he was involved with the Kennedy assassination? Not necessarily. They didn't prove that. But he lied about being involved with the CIA.
Hmm. Yeah.
So what do you take that then? It's like, well, he's not any more honest, and in fact, he's probably got more to hide. Why, if he honest men don't hide and don't lie, you
Yeah.
know?
Well, the movie does a couple brilliant things. One is I love that opening sequence where it's Martin Sheen. He's narrating it. They're going over John F. Kennedy's presidency, and it's showing like all the amazing things
Yeah,
he's done, and it's kind of like this inspirational feeling while also like very psychedelic and crazy because
yes,
the way Oliver Stone like edits this movie,
it
it
goes
feels
fast.
like you're drowning in information.
Yes,
So the way he does it is that he shoots the movie on standard 35 mil, then he does 16 mil and 8 millimeter, mixes all three of them together and cuts to each shot like within a second. And imagine having that like assault your senses for
hmm,
about 3 hours. And then
right,
see Nixon and have that assault your senses for 3.5 hours.
right.
And it's brilliant because you get this feeling through this style that, yeah, America is doing all right. But once it fades and goes into that nightmarish phase, it's like, this is where you're going to be. You're going to be stuck in this nightmare because after John F. Kennedy was killed, America started to regress into this place that is extremely unpleasant, that is extremely terrifying. And after Kennedy was killed, it sort of seems like we lost our innocence in a way.
I totally
We
agree with
sort
that,
of
Mike.
we kind of became ancient Rome, where Caesar was to be killed, and yeah,
Well, to your
his
point too, I
his
think we
yeah.
became our in many respects, our worst enemy,
Hmm.
because we should not have been doing that to our people. We should not have been lying to our citizenry. We obviously should not have been taking out a president who we disagreed with, no matter what his policy was. And his
Yeah.
policies weren't that radical. in those times.
Mm.
What they were, though, is they weren't going to give money to the war machine that his
Mhm.
predecessor, Dwight Eisenhower, the great savior and general of World War II, had warned about, which is interesting that, he's the one who basically said, I've been there. I know this better than any of you. Watch out. Um,
Mhm.
and but it wasn't even just about the communist threat being in our hemisphere with Cuba right there. It was all about the money that could be made. And I mean, we're over in Vietnam and everything else, and Kennedy's looking at it and going like, what is the point of this? This isn't really working, and there's no real reason to be here. And it's the same bogus thing, like, oh, we have to get these people before they get us, and they end up getting us because we can't fight them. We can't fight them in their own backyard, and we don't even have a real purpose there other than greed and sort of machismo. But what I love about this movie, to your very point, is it starts by grabbing you by the collar right away, and it does not let you go. And even in those moments where, I think it's kind of shrewd that and Kevin Costner, he got some criticism for this, that he does the Southern accent as Garrison, when Garrison did not have a Southern accent. He's just going to talk low a little bit like that. But the fact is, he slows it down, and he's sort of like slow to understand this, and almost, he's the man, he's the
Mhm.
institution, he's the guy who is working for the government as a DA. And so if his eyes are slowly but opened up, he's awakened to it all, then I think that's a good sort of conduit for us as we're watching this. Because even if you're not like me, or maybe you, when you're starting to watch it with a predisposed willingness to buy into all that we're seeing because of all we know, um, he represents you, and you come away at the end as convinced as he is that there's lots of shenanigans and skullduggery going on here. Plus, there's just too many questions about stuff. The people who they didn't interview, the questions that they didn't ask, when he goes, answer the question, ask the question, nobody asks the question, different things like that. And, all the stuff that he ran into, and sort of, being told this and that and no and everything else. And then, um, yeah, he did not convince the jury, and the detractors will tell you this, that he did not convince the jury that Clay Shaw was guilty. Um, and I think they returned the verdict in less than 2 hours. But he did convince every last person on that jury that there was a conspiracy. So he
Yeah.
just put Clay Shaw smack dab in it without any question. But he did convince them that there was enough smoke to say there was plenty of fire here. And to me, that's the case that he won. He walks away at the end. He didn't win, but he won the case for the American people. He won a case for American justice, kept it alive, and got the files open. Got Frank Church to have his Senate committee in the '70s, and kept this thing going. When he was the only person out of the entire nation who brought any of these conspirators, or the possibility of these conspirators, and all these terrible, weird people all connected to it, to trial.
Yeah, the craziest thing is, and even like when I was, because this movie came out in '91, so
Right.
I obviously didn't see it. I wouldn't have been able to say what the hell was going on in '91. I was a real young kid, but the amazing thing is that there are so many inconsistencies with his assassination
Yeah.
that ring so true. Like the Warren report, as Garrison saw when he read it, was just nonsense in a
Yeah.
lot of ways. Like, how could John F. Kennedy have been shot that quickly at that range so precisely in a row? Because he's like, bam, head, bam, shoulder, bam, back, boom, 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 like real fast.
Well, and then
Someone
there's the
was
magic
able to
bullet that
shoot
somehow
him,
travels all
reload.
the way around,
Yeah,
because
and with
one
a
of the
bolt
bullets hit.
action rifle, like you
Yeah.
can't
Oh
do
my
that.
God.
You
It
gotta
shakes
reload
just
that
as you're
shit.
holding it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that the triangulation crossfire were to happen. Now, do they have the necessarily the right people? Well, what was it? Joe Pesci's character. David Ferry.
Yeah.
I try
David
not
Ferry.
to call him Dick Ferry and have people think I'm saying the wrong thing here. I think I was because he made Nixon. I'm thinking of that, not because he's gay. And like I don't know if Dave Ferry was there and Clay Burchard, who was also Clay Shaw, Tommy Lee Jones. But I do think there's definitely more than one shooter that day,
Right.
and to hit him that fast and that whole magic bullet theory just sounds completely ridiculous.
Well, some
Yeah.
20 people plus ran up from their position on the grass, or even across the street, to behind the wall, the where the fence was, because they thought they saw smoke and shots coming from there.
Hmm.
I mean, and as the one FBI guy who's probably not an FBI guy in the movie tries to tell somebody who's telling him that you heard echoes. Well, they don't know
Yeah.
that yet. They don't know what it is for sure. And if somebody thought something was going on there and that many people rushed it, they'd have definitely explored that and said, well, wait a minute, maybe there's a shooter back here. All these people ran to that and they're not all stupid and hearing echoes. And who knows, what they saw or might have seen. There's too many questions asked about all this stuff for anybody to just put this away to bed the way they did. But the bottom line, I think, is, and again, I don't think I'm going out on any limb saying this, that the government clearly had something to do with this. At
Yeah.
least, at the very least, people who used to be in the government,
Yeah.
and they want to cover that fact up because it doesn't make them look good to know that these people were once in the government, entrusted with our protection, and they were traitors. That's
Mhm.
it. They're traitors. But there's other things too that are on record that he doesn't even go into here that he could have. Like, I mean, there was that big famous meeting. I think it was the 2 nights before the assassination on the outskirts of Dallas, where all kinds of rich people were. Richard Nixon says he wasn't in Dallas on that day when he was. And I'm not saying that Nixon
Mhm.
was part of this. He might have known people who knew something about it. You don't have the people who were in the CIA connected to the mayors and different people and all those kind of things. It's just a little too coincidental with everything. Ruby and the mob. The mob, would be the place where you'd find hitmen and know how to get rid of them and make them disappear, et cetera, et cetera. The fact that David Ferry was training Cuban radicals to go back in there and hopefully overturn Castro at some day in Florida, and he's connected to these things. These offices that are using the same space. I don't believe in coincidence. Coincidence is really, I think the world's way of telling you this is suspicious.
Yeah. Yeah, there's too many holes, and not just in John F. Kennedy, but also in what's going on with that official Warren report. It doesn't make any sense how someone could get shot that quick. And yeah, it would make sense that, why would he get killed? Because it's not about who killed Kennedy that's important in the movie. It's important why he got killed.
Right.
And when you see why he got killed, it's that scene where Joe Pesci's like, "It's an enigma wrapped within a mystery." It's like it really is that,
Yeah, yeah.
you know.
Well,
Be-
and the thing too is I've heard for years now, decades really, people say, well, if he was killed by a conspiracy, why don't we know all that yet? Well, we do, but we just
yeah,
haven't recognized that it's an absolute conspiracy or whatever. I mean, yeah, the way the autopsy was handled. I mean, the president is shot dead. It's a murder case first and foremost, which gives Dallas jurisdiction over it, and they haul him out of there before they even have a chance to really go over it properly. You've got all these agents and everybody else standing around while this is done, and the doctors are trying to do the work, and then they lose the brain, and the bodies are in different caskets, and all this craziness. It's absurd.
yeah,
There's just too much there. Like somebody, if it was LBJ or somebody who would be head of the FBI or the Secret Service or whatever who was there at the time would have known we have to have some protocols here. There has to be stuff done here. I mean, as bad as the Lincoln assassination was back in 1865, Edwin Stanton, who was the Secretary of War at the time, a very powerful and rigid man, took over and said, "We're doing this, we're doing that. You guys do that. You guys do that. Find this." There just has to be structure here, and there was never anybody really fully in charge, at least not as far as the autopsy. And they scrubbed the limousine clean. Oh, we don't want the press to see the blood in the seats. Well, fellas, they've already seen the blood in the seats. They've got the photos. They've got the film and everybody's testimony on television for the next 6 months. I don't think you scrub down in the limousine when you might be able to figure out the trajectory of the blood, or maybe there's bullets in there. Who knows?
hmm
None of this was known then. They would have never done that in any other instance unless it was, we have to do this to wink, wink, make sure that we put this man up as the patsy and get it done and get him shot and all that in 2 days after Kennedy is shot. It's just, it's so, if you believe that Oswald is the lone killer, then I don't think you're paying attention because there's too much. I mean, literally hundreds of questions that would just give you pause in any other kind of crime story. And here it's the president.
yeah.
And these are even worse.
And there's that very telling scene where Garrison talks to Mr. X on Capitol Hill, and Mr. X, played by Donald Sutherland. I guess Oliver Stone was thinking at one point to get Marlon Brando to do the scene. And I'm like, okay, well, that's going to be a lot of lines of dialogue you're going to have to strap to Kevin Costner's chest for because he's not going to remember his lines.
Make sure you get
Uh,
those cue cards written real clear.
yeah, he'll just Krypton that shit again. But well, but you get that scene where he's very he's telling you basic facts, Mr. X, where you're like, oh yeah, why didn't they do that? For instance, the security
Oh, terrible.
in yeah, they
We would
wouldn't
have
have
never allowed those
marked
windows
all
open.
those
You would
streets.
never let the bubble top down. You would have had
Mhm.
the people riding on the side of the car to protect the president. Hundreds of things that they didn't do right. We would have never let that umbrella be opened up like that.
Yeah,
Exactly. It's like, and if he did open it, you would immediately go, "Why did you open the umbrella? It's a sunny day. What are you nuts?" And it's
yeah,
right before he shot. All that stuff would be suspect to everybody.
yeah,
There's 20 people going up to the fence. We would have round up all those people and say, "What did you see? Tell us," and given them the benefit of the doubt.
yeah,
Um, I also think it's very key in that scene with Mr. X that he starts out by talking about, all the people they got rid of after World War II. We got rid of this guy, put this person in,
mhm,
put the Shah in Iran, all that. We were good, very good. Then along
yeah,
comes Cuba, not so good. It's like, oh yeah, that's
yeah,
right. We have a CIA that's got a well-storied history of doing all kinds of things that interfere throughout the world, us meddling in other people's business. Again, not to draw a connection to Marty Supreme, but Marty Supreme is about this guy who's a goofy, sort of kind of con man who just also happens to be a good tennis player. But his real wizardry and talent is chutzpah and self-importance and conning people into giving him what he wants, whether it's a hotel room or their virginity or whatever else. Um, and that's American hubris after World War II. We saved the world from fascism. So, oh, okay, well, we made strange bedfellows with Stalin, but we'll let Stalin do whatever he wants, but then we'll spend the rest of the century trying to undermine him, and we'll interfere with all these other places to undermine him too that we think might be communist sympathetic or communist literally, and we can't have that in the world. So America's hardly was, clean. Their hands weren't clean after all this, and they did all this stuff. And so, surprise, surprise, we get into this, and we've overthrown other governments, overthrown other presidents and such. We'll overthrow ours too.
yeah, and you also have this element of absolute panic because this is like because now we're kind of living in that time again where now us questioning objective reality I think it was really put through the magnascope during JFK's assassination. And then, of course, what led to that was, Martin Luther King's assassination, his brother's assassination. You have all of these kind of piling up, and we could say, "Oh, well, things are crazy back then." Like they were crazy, but maybe some things are happening because, like you said, with the Bay of Pigs failure, you had JFK who pulled out of Laos. He wanted to pull out of Vietnam, and he's doing all this while he's screwed up trying to kill Castro to prevent a nuclear disaster. The military industrial complex probably saw that, thought, yeah, this peace loving asshole is going to try to screw over all our plans. No, we're America. We're number one. We're going to win this war. We're not pulling out. And he's going to pay for screwing up what he did with Castro because that could have gotten us all killed. So, it's very
Even though they
likely.
forget, they forget that he saved the world from nuclear disaster with the missiles of
Exactly.
October, which was a genius, really
But it was
genius
through peace
of
and not through
Kennedy to do
militarization. And they
that.
didn't
But I
like
mean, he
that.
was also a very
Yeah.
shrewd chess player. He listened to the right people at the right time,
Hmm.
rejected some people this day, some people he listened to the other day. It was really, I mean, to use the term acting presidential, JFK showed his bones then. He was probably the shrewdest guy in the room because he knew when to listen and when not to. And also his brother helped a great deal, as much as nepotism was probably frowned on as much then as it is now. Um, but yeah, these people, there's money to make. The military industrial complex. It's they talked about the helicopters and the.
Mm.
I mean, if you go back to World War II, you've got American manufacturing companies making tanks and jeeps and stuff like that for both sides because there's more money to be made if you double
Hmm.
your efforts.
Hmm.
Well, let's not take a side in the war, or maybe we will, but up front we'll take their money more importantly than taking a
Yeah.
side. So this has been part of de rigueur of sort of the American way for many, many decades. But I think what this film does is it points out how so much of there was, and it was, I dare say, kind of a vast conspiracy. I know that becomes almost a cliche that we laugh at now when we hear it, but at that point it really was, because I mean they had the cover story out in the press, they had the communications go out, they had the cabinet up in the air, so they couldn't do anything about it. They had to get Mrs. Kennedy on board and LBJ sworn in right away, and then they had the groups of the autopsy and going back to DC with the bodies in the right place, and figuring out where they lost part of his brain. Which, I mean, how do you lose part of the
How do you
material?
lose the president's
No,
brain?
exactly.
Yeah.
It's absurd. And oh, we were all running around. There was so little time. About bullshit. These people are trained. They're
Yeah.
expert at all kinds of war and possible moves and defense and everything else. And these people are often ex-military men in the CIA, in the service, in the et cetera, et cetera. Just way, way, way too many questions, way too much mess about it all. I mean, who said, "Oh, we better scrub up that limousine. We can't let the press see
Mm-hmm.
that." Oh, like when have they worried about the press ever? I mean, it's like, come on. And then you know, we talk about losing our innocence. We all lost our innocence when we watched Lee Harvey Oswald shot on national television.
Yeah.
For America's first snuff film,
But
and
Jack
everybody in America
Doyle,
saw it.
right? Or Jack
Jack Ruby.
Ruby. I'm
Yeah.
getting him confused from Brian Doyle Murphy,
Oh,
which I
Brian Doyle Murphy played Jack Ruby.
yeah, I know. It's just funny because like when he
Murray
goes out, he's like
Stoddard played him in this
Oswald, and
movie.
he shoots him.
Yeah, that's
I
right.
thought I heard Griswold for a second, so it
That's
kind of
funny.
screwed me.
That's funny.
Yeah,
I love your comparisons.
yeah,
Um, but I mean, whether it's the shadows on that famous photo of Lee Harvey Oswald in the background, in the backyard with his exact rifle and his exact gun, the fact that they were able to have all these cars show up at the movie theater when it was basically just, they thought maybe somebody who had shot a police officer. Um, and even the way Oswald surrendered, he stood up, like, why is he in the movie theater? It seemed more or less like a rendezvous point. Like that's where you'd go. Otherwise, he could have hidden in 100 places. He could have hidden under a tree somewhere in somebody's backyard and not be seen. But you go into a public place where, cops are going up and down the street and all these kind of pedestrians who see you. None of it makes sense. And
yeah.
even the fact that they didn't give Oswald a lawyer. He never had a lawyer speak to him. He only had the cops interrogate him. The first thing is, I mean, they could have thrown out the whole case right there, because we had it then that you had to have representation. That wouldn't have stood up in court. So they were just, it seemed like to me like they were deliberate mistakes. I just get lost. Oh, it seemed I was lost there for a second. What I love about this movie is that it plays all that paranoia, and it's done in its editing, which also won the Oscar. It's writing, it's a lot of characters, a lot of scenes. It asks us, it never slows down for us. It asks us to move along. I mean, Donald Sutherland knew his entire dialogue, apparently. And he said it was one of the trickiest things to memorize, because he had to say it, and he had to say it calmly, but fast, and with great authority. And it's just fascinating. I also have to say, as much as we give John Williams credit for all of his Steven Spielberg scores, there's some of his scores that I think we don't give nearly enough attention to. I think Home Alone is a great score. It's charming, it's whimsical, but it's also kind of comical, and we don't see him do comical scores a lot.
Great
Nixon,
score.
he was nominated for a best film for this one, and right off the bat, I mean, I love that. Da, na, 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 na,
Yeah,
it almost sounds like an elegy, but there's boom doo 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 doo.
Yeah, he has this very kind of like whimsical light.
And it keeps you going, like there's something here, and it builds. I mean, it's all part of the same fabric. And the one thing that's funny is, I was preparing for the show a little bit. I didn't watch the film the whole way through, because I've seen it so many times, probably 20 times, and I almost have it memorized. But I don't think we give Oliver Stone enough credit. I think he was in many ways maybe the filmmaker of the 90s on a certain level, because he did all these films about America, whether it was Platoon or this or Nixon. He held the mirror up to us and basically was willing to go there, knowing that it was controversial and that he'd be alienating a lot of people who were not wanting to see these stories told by the government, the press, certain states, certain political figures. And he was doing God's work in a way by reminding us, folks, don't become complacent, don't become asleep at the wheel. And here we are, how many decades later, and we let 1,000 people get pardoned on January 6th for committing treason. And we don't bat an eye. The press still covers this administration like, well, how crazy was it today? How crazy was it today? How crazy has it been for the last 10 years? You haven't covered anything with the real eagle eye that you need to, except for Joe Biden's age, it seems. So, I don't think we've learned much since 64, 63 and
Yeah.
64.
So a couple points of that. I think you're right because now the Epstein files are kind of like the JFK files because God only knows what heads will roll and what will happen to our
Right.
institution when all of that information comes out. Because I'm registered as a Democrat, but people are like, Bill Clinton's in those files. What do you want to have happen to him? I'm like, fuck him. I don't care. Let them
Exactly.
all
He's
go
in
down.
trial and their child, having sex with little girls. They need to go to jail. I don't care what
Yeah.
party they are, who they are, even if they're favorite actors or whatever else.
Yeah, so we have that. Plus, we have all the stuff going on with ICE, where we have a video of a woman being shot by an officer. Although we can see her turning her wheels away from him, his reflection of him coming up to her. Which, by the way, who holds a gun and a phone at the same time? What is this douchebag trying to get fucking content? And
Yeah, that's
then
exactly right. They're
yeah,
told to have content to scare America by showing this on the news and seeing them American citizens get
yeah.
beat up. So everybody shuts
And what
up
does
and
and what does
doesn't
the
question.
government do? They hide him away so they
Yeah.
can keep
Oh, now he's
him
got internal
safe.
injuries. Really? Where did he get the internal injuries from?
Yeah, from
From
keeping
eating too
the
much,
safety off of his
from eating
gun
too
because
much
he's a fucking
taco.
idiot and
No,
doesn't
because he
know
ate
how
too
to
much
train.
Taco Bell. These
Yeah.
fat, lazy SOBs walking around thinking they can shoot anybody they want. They don't have immunity. Even the one guy who told the doctor, back off, you can't attend to Renee Goodwin. She's in her car.
Yeah.
It just came out today that she had a pulse when the emergency medical technicians arrived. Not saying that she could have been saved. If she shot point blank in the face, she was
Yeah.
probably a goner. But nonetheless, she probably bled out because before they even got her to the hospital because she wasn't given care. And who are these people to say that they're not coordinating it with the Minnesota police or
Yeah.
even the state troopers who've come in and the National Guard? ICE is considered its own animal. They're all disguised. They don't carry badges. Their uniforms are inconsistent. Their weaponry is inconsistent. And the first rule of anybody as a cop or no matter what you are, as a police officer, National Guard, is you do not shoot people unless you have probable cause. And that means either they shoot at you or you fear that you're going to be shot. This
Yeah.
woman who's turning the car, he didn't have any fear of his life. Oh, she tried to ram him. Oh, really? At 1 mile an hour when she's turning the car away from him? The
Yeah.
lies are ridiculous. Don't believe your lying eyes, as they say.
Like I
But I
said,
mean, here it
Dad
all is
whistles, he
back
had
in
a gun.
64, and we've got the same thing going over. Those were echoes. You didn't see this. No, that
Exactly.
didn't happen. No, this person was drunk, or this person doesn't know anything, or they're paranoid, or you're asking the wrong questions, or how dare you question your government? All the same stuff. It hasn't changed much. And
Yeah.
again, the enemy is us here. I think it's, we put in ICE and given them this, carte blanche, which isn't right. It isn't legal. And, you know, it's
Yeah.
not much different from what the government's saying. Well, we want to stay in Vietnam. There's money to be made. We want to push back, the Russians and Khrushchev and let them know that America is the true superpower. Blah blah blah. I get some of that motivation, but you don't do it illegally. You don't do it by lying to your people. You don't do it by committing murder and all other kinds of nefarious acts. I mean, when people say, "Oh, well, Watergate, it was a third-rate burglary." Yeah, it was a third-rate burglary, probably to find out what the Democrats had on Nixon, who was connected to some of this stuff, which was one of the suspicions. That's why they sent E. Howard Hunt in, because E. Howard Hunt was a black op during all this stuff and may have known what files they had that possibly could have put Nixon's participation in whatever he was
Yeah.
doing in Dallas in center stage during the Democratic convention, and then turned his poll numbers down by showing that he's a crook. But nonetheless, it's like you don't do any of that. You don't lie to your people. You don't cover it up. You don't pay people to ruin people's campaigns. I mean, all that stuff is legal, and it shouldn't be done by the president. Even when he tells David Frost, if the president doesn't, it's legal. No, it's
Yeah.
not. And Trump thinking he's got complete immunity, even if John Roberts in the Dem court says, "Yeah, presidents were giving him a long, long leash." He shouldn't be given the leash to commit murder. He shouldn't
Yeah.
be given the leash to cover up what he signed into law as the date that the Epstein files were to be released, which is over a month ago now, and they still haven't been released. My question is, where are the safeguards to bring it out anyway? Where's our
Yeah.
Daniel Ellsberg? to do those kind of things. Somebody has to say when the Republican senator who's it starts with a T now. I'm blanking on his name. Who's been rabid about the Epstein file? Says he's going to read the people's names in it on the court steps. Do it. Don't threaten
Yeah.
to do it. Do it.
I
You
think
know.
they're threatening him, and maybe that's why he's not doing
Well,
it.
but I
And
mean, Martin
yeah,
Lane and Robert Grogan and
yeah.
Oliver Stone, for that matter, their lives were all threatened trying to get
Hmm.
out about
That's because
Kennedy.
they have balls, and a lot of these Democrats
Exactly.
don't.
Yeah, but that's
And
well, the Republicans, the Republican senators, and
oh,
the
they're
Epstein
just
files was a
bootlickers.
Republican issue.
Yeah,
It was their issue. They thought they were going to hang Bill Clinton out to dry. They
yeah.
failing to
And then
realize
when it
that
was their boy
Epstein's
Donald,
friend was Trump for a decade or 15 years. But somebody's got to say, if again, the Sean Connery thing is, what are you prepared to do when he asks Elliot Ness that? He's like, you have to say, okay, well, if they've got control of the Congress and the courts, find some way to do it. Get your Daniel Ellsberg, somebody who leaks it out and, does the job and gets it out there, or pressures these people, arrests the people who are defying the law by not getting it out. And same here. They it took a long time for them, but at least Garrison brought the case to court, opened up a lot of Americans' eyes about it, questioned things, and all those other people who continued to question it too, the Joe Q public who wrote the books and exposed it, and went on television shows and gave their life to trying to figure out what's going on here, because the government and the press chose not to.
exactly.
The
And now
press
we're here again.
chose not to. They said, we're looking the other way. We want access. We want power. We want the money.
Yeah,
It's what's done is done. Let's move on. And they were wrong. And they're still wrong today. If they're giving access to, all the goofiness that CBS is doing, it's like we have not learned anything.
yeah.
That's why
And now they're
give
bought
the
out.
guy
Like
good luck.
ABC is bought out by Barry Weiss or Uber Weiss or whatever the fuck her
Yeah,
name is.
CBS.
Yeah,
Yeah,
CBS. Yeah,
but the other Sinclair influences on local stations and stuff like that. It's like they're interested in making money. They're interested in having access. They're interested in power. They're not interested in being truth tellers.
yeah. And now that we're in this situation, things can get even worse with AI because you could just change a piece of footage and it'll be so discernible. I'd say maybe months from now that you won't be able to tell what's been added and what's not been added, where the original source of the video came from, because it's all part of the cloud. And we don't know where that, because it's not like a hard drive where you could be like, oh, it's right here. It's like, no, now
Right.
it's online and it can
Well,
be
and
manipulated.
and they even go into some of that in this movie, where people who submitted photographs never been seen. Some
Yeah.
people who submitted their home video, home movies, they were never seen. There was even
Mhm.
question about Time Life, and when they ran the pictures in Life magazine, if they had a couple shots out of sequence. And I think it's been proven, if I'm not mistaken, that some of that was discovered either during the church
Mm.
Senate hearings, or even recently with the release of some of the files and things like that. So, there's people meddling. And, when Trump talks about the deep state, and I think it's part of this, I mean, he was one of the people who was questioning all this stuff for many, many years, even before he was president. There's a lot of parties and powerful people that, don't want things to change and don't want the truth to come out. And it's interesting.
Mm.
It's in their best interest to keep it under their control and not let Americans see all that's underneath the rocks and the under the behind the curtain, or if you will, using a Wizard
Yeah.
of Oz metaphor. But the fact is, this movie, if you watched it today to a class of high schoolers, and then said, okay, come up with 100 things that has to do with this movie that is equal to what's going on today, if they were thinking, they could probably come up with 200.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's like I remember I said to a group of protesters, we're gonna have our Kent State moment. And they were kind of, they kind of taken back on it. Kind of said that. They're like, oh, I don't know. And then now we have Renee Goods
Yeah,
killing
I
on
agree.
top of 9 other killings. I think ISIS killings, when they started looking into it, is up to 30 right now. It could
Yeah,
be
I think
even
there's
more.
been some more, maybe more than that, but I mean, it's hard to say. We don't have all the evidence of
Yeah.
how much they've done
And
across different states and stuff. But to your very point, Kent State had those god awful photographs of students laying there for just protesting, and that woman, crying out in disbelief as she's like kneeling over her friend's body. Here, our Kent State moment is the video, the cell
yeah.
phone video of this woman who's just, she's nice to the guy, says, I'm not mad at you, I'm just trying to get out of here. And then she turns around and, somebody comes up and thinks they can immediately open her car door and put their hand in her window. It's like, that isn't legal. That's not
Yeah.
legal at all.
And
She's
then he
not
calls her
under
a fucking bitch
suspicion.
after he
Yeah,
shoots
and then
her.
he calls her a fucking bitch after shoots her, and he walks back, doesn't stay to even see what's going on, where the body is. By the way, I just found out yesterday, I guess the dog was okay, which is, they didn't even, the press didn't even have the fortitude to cover
If
that.
Christy Nome was there, it wouldn't have been.
Well, and they cut the dog out of the JD Vance tape. They
Yeah.
cut the dog out because it made the guy look unsympathetic that he's shooting into a car that has a dog in the back.
Oh my
Here's this
God.
woman. She's no threat. She's no terrible, terrorist out for, to case the place. I mean, she's dropped her kid off and now she's going home with her dog. And the dog went to drop the kid off at school as well. I mean, it's just, but they cut it out. It was not in the original tape until they got a hold of the real tape. It's like, why was that cut out? Again, here with, cutting out things and the evidence chain and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But, and the funny thing is, if we didn't have that, who knows where we'd be on this case? If we didn't have the Zapruder film, who knows where we'd be on this case? Because the timeline wasn't working with what the Warren Commission was telling us.
Yeah. And I really love the point you made earlier. Like, this was Oliver Stone at the height of his career, because I don't know when Scarface came out, but he wrote that movie. And
Yeah,
if you've
that's right.
ever read his screenplays,
Oh,
his
yeah.
writing is mwah,
Yeah,
it's
very good.
really detailed. Like,
Yeah,
'cause
I
I
think that
read a
was
lot
in
of screenplays and
1980,
you could
was it
just
maybe?
tell,
Or yeah,
yeah, that some guy
early
just wrote
80s.
it. Oliver Stone, like, you could see that Yale degree all over the
Well,
pages.
and he was great with actors. I mean, the actors
Uh-huh.
in this thing are terrific. I mean, Ed Asner as
Yeah.
what was the character's name that he played? I forget off the top
I
of
don't
my
know,
head.
but I remember I was watching that, and
But
someone's
the
like, "Oh, he was on Mary
ex-FBI guy.
Tyler Moore." I'm like, "He was on Mary Tyler Moore? Was he saying like racist shit on that show?"
No, I mean, in fact, it's funny. He cast him very much. Oh, Guy Bannister. That's right. He was cast
Yeah,
people which against type in a way, but I mean, he had good young actors too, like Michael Rooker was in here, and
yeah,
veteran character actors like J.O. Sanders. I mean, this is Gary Oldman, one of his early film roles, playing Lee Harvey Oswald. He's very good.
he was
I mean,
amazing
and
in it.
it's funny as much as we just gave our Chicago Independent Critics documentary to John Candy. I Like Me. John
Yeah,
Candy is great in his scene in this. Playing
yeah.
the
I thought his
Lee
character was a
Andrews.
little silly, but yeah, I
Well,
get
he
it.
was in real life, but he was
I know.
also
Was he like
rather
always like, "Hey,
notorious.
Daddy-O" and stuff
Yeah,
like
but he was
that?
also notorious and had some rather questionable connections. And he was very good in the couple minutes that he's on screen here.
Oh yeah,
Very well done. And
this movie
it's funny.
needed
This
movie
is at the height
stars.
of
Yeah,
Seinfeld, and Wayne Knight is one of
yeah,
the Garrison guys. J.O. Sanders, great actors like that have been around for a while. Lots of good people.
yeah. I'm surprised Wade Knight is still in as good a shape as he's always been. I guess I can eat more, but the great thing about using such a wide cast of stars is that it helps you follow who is who, because
Yes,
there's like so many people being
that's
interviewed in
right.
this 3 hour. Because this isn't a movie that's like 3 hours and you're like, oh, I bet there's a boring. No, 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 no. You gotta pay attention to the whole thing.
That's
And yeah,
right.
when you got guys like Kevin Bacon, Donald Sutherland, Edward Asner, Jack
Jeff Cameron, yeah,
Lemmon,
Walter Matthau, even as
Walter
that
Matthau,
role
yeah,
is that doggone, it's
yeah,
like even the South wasn't buying into it,
yeah.
It was
But it
so
makes
funny.
you remember these characters. So then when Garrison's like giving that must have been the longest monologue I've ever seen in film, where he's giving like the 1 hour court. And I guess like he actually memorized that, but I'm
Yeah.
sure they did it between days,
Oh, of course, and there's
because
different
there's no
cuts and
way you
stuff.
could memorize
But
all
he
that.
did a great job, and it's funny for all the information that this film throws at you, Mike.
Yeah.
I think most of it's made crystal clear. I mean, I
Mhm.
saw it with a friend at the time who really knew nothing about the JFK case, and when we
Mm.
went to dinner afterwards and talked about it, he knew exactly what was going on and was able to talk. And it's like, wow, that's good that So I think even with the different film stocks and a lot of movement, a lot of energy, and a lot of characters, he got the gist of it.
Yeah.
There's even that scene where Michael Rooker, who's on the detail, and is maybe a little more conservative, a little more questioning of some of the stuff that Garrison said. I think he played Bill Broussard in it, but there's that one guy who pulls him off the street and pulls him in the alley. And says, like, you got to get away from this stuff. This is not good. Like, you don't want to ruin your reputation, and people are looking at this stuff, and like even that little bit of paranoia. Like, is that just a businessman who's looking out for him, a colleague of his? who he knew from the law offices, or is this like basically him saying, "Watch your back because maybe they'll come and take you guys out if they think you're getting too close"?
Yeah.
I think the thing that they don't cover here as well as maybe they could have, and again, I think it's streamlining stuff and maybe creative liberties, is Garrison was a little bit of a grandstander and a little bit of a celebrity guy. I mean, he was well aware of
Mm,
what the cameras were doing and the attention he was getting from this. And he went on the Tonight Show notoriously at the time of this to talk about it. But I mean, it was news and he was a big deal. But I think he enjoyed that, and you get a sense here that you know Kevin Costner's Garrison is a little bit more of a Boy Scout. He's a really good guy and
yeah.
clean cut, like trying to just get to the truth. So maybe that's a little bit giving the critics fodder to say, well, he wasn't quite as lily white and pure as he sort of is portrayed here, because he seemed to be a little bit scoundrelly on some levels himself. Well, that
Mm,
may be casting, that could maybe be a creative choice in the way the screenplay presents its protagonist. But
yeah.
I think it's done here because there are so many other enemies around him. You have to have somebody who, even if he was that way in real life, is still fighting the right fight and is fighting a much better fight than most of the other people who are presented here on the fringes, in the shadows, and as the bad guys.
Yeah, and it did a clever job casting Kevin Costner, because it's sort of like, because I'll say something controversial here. Kevin
He was
Costner's
like
kind
the
of a boring actor,
well,
but
this is right after Dance with Wolves. He was the big new leading man. People
oh
compared him to
yeah, at
Billy
the time he was at his
Cooper after the
peak.
Untouchables, et cetera, et
Yeah,
cetera.
and Death with Wolves, he was making JFK around the time, it was gonna come out, but,
Yeah,
like, here they're taking Kevin Costner and they're intentionally kinda making him dry, because he's supposed to be this prosecutor who has a cool head, who can
right.
see this case, and, despite this insanity going on around him, he keeps his shit together, and if I would say there's one major flaw in the movie, it's Sissy Spacek's character, because she's just a woman who's always like, "Pay attention to your kids. Why aren't you paying attention to us? Don't you love us?" And it's like, yeah, and our
A little
country is
naggy or
literally
she
under
in your
attack.
a little naggy in your
Yeah,
bookish.
like,
Yeah, I
shut the
mean,
fuck
she's a
up and
little
let me try to save America.
well,
You know?
right, she might be a little one note here. You're right. I think
Yeah,
she's well, and I'm sure those people for going up against the government, that wasn't done a lot in those days. They probably feared for their lives, so maybe that's the
mm,
sort of rising tension of that and those stakes each time with her
yeah.
character.
That was the only time it made sense, when she got the phone call from the guy, and he's like, "Oh, how old's your daughter? Did you want to be in a beauty pageant,
Yeah,
honey?"
right.
Like, when that's going on, then it's like, yeah, you got to say, our family's under attack. This guy just called you, and you're just talking about this thing you saw on the TV. Like, I get that scene, but then there are others where, like, every single scene is her just like nagging him, and I'm like, no, 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 this isn't the best portrayal. But yeah, I mean, I have to say, this movie, you don't have to. Oliver Stone's movies are like the movies that got me into 70s politics and stuff like that,
Oh, that's cool.
because I remember I saw Nixon. And I saw clips of it on TV, and just the way he was cutting between black and white and color, and like old 16 mil film stock to 35. I'm like, holy shit, what is this? And then I was just entranced by it, because Oliver Stone, like, as a kid who likes things that are fast paced, Oliver Stone's like coke fueled energy that are in those movies just work perfectly.
Well, and
And
they captured the paranoia and the
yeah,
energy, and the sort of fear of the time. I mean, just the way you'd sort of dial up action scenes or horror scenes and stuff like that. He had the wise idea to sort of apply the same kind of rules to this stuff, because this is real tense horror film
mhm,
stuff. It's the American history of horror, if you will, that
yeah,
is in these kind of cases, and it connects to Vietnam and Nixon and Watergate and JFK. It's all part of this weird
yeah.
10, 15 years of some very, very dark paranoid times.
And that was Oliver Stone at his best, because I feel like Oliver Stone at his best is like when he tackled the 70s and Vietnam and politics, because he was in Vietnam for a year.
Yeah.
And like, to him, it's extremely personal. He's very well educated. And yeah, JFK is not a movie that comes off like it came from some Yahoo. Like, Oliver Stone researched like 200 books, and his team did to go through this film. There's even a version of the script that has like notes highlighting everything as to like the
Right,
sources
right.
he
That's what we
got it
talked about
from.
earlier. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
It's annotated to its eye's teeth. I mean, eye teeth is just incredibly detailed. So, yeah, and people want to just dismiss this kind of stuff outright because they don't want to believe that about their country, or they didn't
yeah,
do the things that they should have to uncover the truth that other people had to do for them, like regular folks in America. So there's all kinds of motives that are driving their criticism of him, but you can't deny that this film was riveting, that he makes a good case for the idea that there was definitely a conspiracy. There's too many questions about all the things that went on, and it's tremendously exciting, thrilling, scary, dramatic, and well acted with a vast cast, all kinds of different people, all different kinds of story threads, and it all holds together. And the music and the production
mm,
design, the period piece details. I mean, even when J.O. Sanders and Kevin Costner go up onto the thing and try to do the bolt action rifle, and he's going through the thing, and you
mhm,
see Costner kind of shake as you're seeing the shots of him imagining, the FBI Clint Hill running to the back to jump on to protect Mrs. Kennedy as she goes out to retrieve part of her husband's head.
yeah,
Those kind of things are just exciting as hell. It's
yeah,
great filmmaking. You're there. It's tense. It's raw. It feels real. And I love when J.O. says, "Well, that's the whole case. There's no way that he could have made those shots." Exactly. And yet they tried to tell
exactly.
us that,
Yeah,
oh yeah, and then that one bullet just happened to go through somebody's neck and arm,
yeah,
didn't lodge in the knee. It's like, what? And it's
yeah,
that pristine?
yeah,
Maybe
yeah.
maybe
That makes
Ruby
no
didn't
sense.
put it
Like,
on the maybe Ruby didn't put it on the stretcher, but that bullet
you don't
wasn't
even get a bullet
believable even before then.
yeah, you don't even get a bullet that is that magical in Call of Duty. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
Exactly. I mean, you could
Yeah.
shoot that into a tub of Jello and have a little bit of a bend.
Which I'm sure they tried on Mythbusters. Like, was
Sure.
JFK really assassinated?
We've
Hey,
got
Jamie,
some of
what
the
do you think?
hardest
Oh, well,
envelopes
let's
we
try
could
one for
find.
you.
A week away from freshness.
Yeah, we are professionals.
We're going to
We're gonna
shoot it from
see if the
800
president
feet
got
through
shot
the
by a magic
trees,
bullet.
driving away from us at 15 miles an hour.
I
And
could
that's the
just
other thing, too,
imagine
is
like the TBS promo where you see like Adam and Jamie in the corner and they're like all happy looking and it just says like JFK assassination like coming up next. But
you're a
yeah,
single shooter, by the way. Think about this. You're a
yeah,
single shooter, and you've got access of him coming right towards you for over a minute from that
yeah,
that turn down that one street.
yeah.
He's coming right towards you.
But
But
they
don't
don't
take
shoot
the
him from
shots
there.
there. No, take it when he takes the slow shot there. And then even when he's turning, don't shoot him there.
Yeah,
No, take it when he gets in front of you, right before the overpass. And then you've got to get off three shots when you could have gotten three good shots with him as a sitting duck coming right at you and only getting closer. I mean,
yeah,
the pure logic and physics and common sense of this. If anybody questions any of that after seeing this and all of it being presented to you, or reading any
yeah,
one of those JFK books, the very least you can say, even if I don't agree with that exact theory, the mob did it, Castro did it, the CIA did it, the CIA did it with the mob or whatever. You're going to come away and say, like, this thing stinks.
yeah.
The
Like it
cover
stinks in
story
here.
is even worse than any of these other theories.
Yeah, the cover story just brings up more cover stories, you know? It's an enigma wrapped up in a mystery box. But yeah, it's
Yeah,
like one of
in a
those
riddle.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're wrapped up in a riddle, man. I'm
Oh,
surprised Joe
Pesci was really
Pesci.
good too. This was the
I
year
know.
after Pesci won his Oscar, and the year after
Best Oscar speech
Costner won
ever.
his Oscar
It's
for
an honor.
Dances with
Thank you.
Wolves,
Then he leaves.
and he was not expected to win.
Yeah. Yeah.
Bruce
Oh, yeah.
Davison
That's
had won
probably
the
why he
Golden
had no
Globe
speech.
for
Yeah.
I forget what the name of it was now.
I don't know.
Longtime Companion. He was very
Uh,
good in that, but Pesci wasn't expected to win, mostly because he was such an unsavory character. I mean,
yeah.
Tommy was just so despisable in Goodfellas, but man, it was a great performance, and he's a
Yeah.
very good actor at playing certain kinds of roles. He's very good. And he was great as David Ferry here.
I'm surprised that Joe Pesci took that role because, he's like a tough guy. And then it's like, you're going to play a gay guy named Ferry who may have killed the president. And he'd be like,
But it was
well, how much
Oliver
am I getting
Stone. He was
paid?
at the height of his powers too.
Exactly. It's Oliver Stone.
Everything
So he's
was
like,
attention
okay.
getting and everything else. By the way, only one person got an acting nomination from this film. Do you know who it was?
Not Kevin Costner.
Nope.
Who would it be? Tommy Lee Jones.
Yes,
Oh,
Tommy Lee
well, that
Jones
was
is
easy.
Clay Shaw, best supporting actor. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. And who
And I
knows if
think part of it is because he was so good, but he was also playing very much against type. And
yeah.
that Tommy Lee Jones, usually the toughest guy in the room, and here he's playing like with the little bells and his cigarettes and his kind of like drinks and come here and blah blah blah. I didn't do that. It's just
Yeah,
sort of
yeah.
a Southern
Yeah,
gentleman.
Tommy Lee Jones or no, it was Joe
Blonde
Pesci in
curly
that one
wig.
scene where he was, like, dressed up in, like, the
Oh yeah, you're
17th
having like
century.
some sort of 17th century costume party with
Yeah, and then there's, like, a dude in, like, all gold.
oh,
Yeah.
yeah, and that I think Bacon was in that scene too because he was talking about these
Yeah, he was just sitting there like,
homosexual
"Ah."
costume parties and stuff. It's like,
Oh
wow.
my god. Yeah, it's great. But yeah, I'm gonna give my final rating for the movie, and then I gotta go out and get protected against ice for tomorrow.
Oh, good, good, good
Uh,
for you.
oh shit, where'd I put it? Now I'm turning into David Ferry. All right, so out of how many Guinnesses, what would you give
I'll make it
JFK?
easy. 4.
There we go. Same here for me. 4 Guinnesses for me as well. Uh, there's a movie that there's just quite unlike most movies like it, you know? And
Yeah,
I'm
I
not a
mean,
conspiracy
this is
theory
one, and
guy.
yeah, there was very little ever done before or after that was quite like this film.
Yeah, I really want Oliver Stone to go back to that height of his career because I think once he stopped
He may be too old now.
covering,
I wonder, is he even making movies anymore? I don't
I
think
don't
so.
know, like I want to see the documentaries he did where he interviewed Fidel Castro, and he did another documentary where he interviewed Putin.
Right.
And I would like to see those. I know he did something called like the alternate history of the United States, which is actually
Oh, that's right.
quite
That's a documentary
fascinating.
series, I think. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he
I mean, I think
narrates the
he's
whole thing.
contributed to good work, but I don't know if he's going to make movies anymore. I'm not sure that he probably couldn't get the financing for whatever he maybe want to take on anyway.
Yeah,
But he
was
had a significant effect on cinema for a number of years.
yeah. I think post like the Vietnam movies, once he kind of got that out of his system, and he's like, "I'm angry," and I said everything I needed to say. It was kind of like, "Uh oh, now I
It's
don't really
funny
have
how
much to
well
say."
but it's funny how well he's done. There's a lot of JFK
Yeah,
miniseries and movies out and all that.
yeah,
None of them is done as well as this one. I mean, all the stuff he shot to fake the Dealey Plaza shooting and how many hours and whatever it took to make all that come together. It plays brilliantly here. It
yeah,
really feels like those people, and like that. Just that shot you have in the background here above us. I mean, that looks
yeah.
so good. The costuming, the acting, it's very authentic.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess, like, they shot that scene with, like, 14 cameras or something like that because they
I
only had,
believe it.
like, 3 days, and
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it's amazing, like, I would have loved to have been a fly on that wall in the editing room where
Oh,
the
I know that
editor
would have
just
been
hits a few more
so
buttons and
exciting.
Stone's like, "No, no, no, do more shots, make it faster," but
But
yeah.
the editors probably were saying, like, let's make sure this is cogent. Like
Yeah.
nothing goes fast. We have to make sure that you're seeing what's going on here. Even if
Yeah.
it's just a cut, it has to play for the human eye. A lot of times quick cuts that are done in a room,
Yeah.
when they're blown up on camera, go by too fast. You can't see everything. So
Yeah.
they really knew what they're doing here and earned that Oscar for sure.
Oh, yeah, just the way they cut on the movement is so good. Like, they're like, one scene, they're going into court and they're just passing a document, and they did a little editing trick I like to do where someone gets in front of the frame, and instead of cutting the shot where they're, like, exiting the frame, they just get them like, mid-frame, and it's like, "Bam, next shot." We
Yeah.
know. Like, I've
Oh
seen
yeah,
fucking
all the different
wrestlers just do that
witnesses, all
shit,
their,
you know?
and I love the fact too that Oliver Stone throws in the hoariest of little details, but it worked like gangbusters. It's when Kevin Costner as Garrison breaks that fourth wall and looks right at us, the
"It's up to you."
American public. It's up to you. Like, what are you
Yeah.
going to do about it? There, I've done
Yeah.
everything I can. Now you need to do something, and it's
Yeah,
so
one of my
true.
friends who works in the film industry hates that part, and I'm like, "I can tell you why you're wrong about that on so many
That's right.
levels." But, yeah, and he gets really exaggerated with it. I think, like, when they're having, like, the gay orgy scene, like, at one point, they pull it in, like, a bowl sound effect or something like that when he's, like,
Hmm.
pulling some guy's nose, like, "Rrr." I'm like, "What the fuck?"
Oh,
You're
yeah.
like, "I know
Some
Oliver
of it gets
Stone's
a little
recorded some shit
corny
when he
or
did."
a little broad. I grant you, but
But I
you know,
love how over the top he is. I love a director who
but
loves
I
to show
also
their
love how
guts.
great John Williams' music is. Like when he's
Mhm.
the teams are all set. It's going to be a Turkish shoot, and you got the dun dun bum bum dun 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 dun. It's just like building. It's like, oh my god! And then he's smart enough to back off with the cracking and the noise of the gunshots just filling the sound and all that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. And then it kind of
and it
becomes
just gets
somber
totally
after that. It's
quiet
realized the
when he says back
president's
and to the
dead.
left.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
brilliant. I mean,
'Cause
it's
you have all
so
that
well
noise and
done.
silence back and to the left, and you're taking it in
Yeah.
like we're watching something horrifying, but we're forced to
Well, and
watch
that was
like
also a lot the
a
first time that a lot of people had ever seen this Zapruder film. You know, it
yeah,
was Geraldo Rivera played it in the 70s when Robert Grogan was on there talking about the tape, and some people had seen it then, but not en masse they had not. And this in this film was the first time a lot of people had seen that, and it is bad. I mean, first
yeah.
of all, it's not very well shot. You know, like
No.
he's kind of missing, like there's a lot of heads on it and stuff like that. But you know, when it's right in front of him,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
can't miss that. Oh
Oh,
my
yeah.
God.
I mean, that it looks like dust when you see it, but that's not dust, that's his brains
That's
going
right.
all over the
Yeah.
place.
And then you
So
see the
yeah.
flap of the skin almost like, you know, it's
Yeah.
like taken off
I
his
thought that was
head.
a hoodie
Like
when I first saw it.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Like you don't realize this is his
yeah.
whole face,
Yeah, it's
you know,
it's it's
from his
and I
cheek on
like
up.
movies that have balls like that. Like, who else would have the balls to show John F. Kennedy's brains on a stretcher? And like you said,
Well,
like, I
and
don't
it's
think someone
there's a lot
placed
of
that bullet, but
a
it's
lot of
so
times
like, "Holy fuck, he's
some of them are
doing
real.
that?" That
Yeah,
yeah, it's amazing.
it is. It is.
Yeah.
Well, this is fun, Mike. Thank you
This
for
is
having me.
yeah, that was
Oh,
this
we
was
speak
great,
the
I
common
love
language. We speak
yeah.
many things similar, including a touch of the paranoid.
Yeah, oh, well, there's certainly no reason to be paranoid today.
What? Why are you saying that? Shh.
Yeah, don't say Trump. I mean, I love Trump. He's great. But yeah. All right. Well, Jeff, thanks so much for coming on. If you like what you saw, remember to ring the bell, hit subscribe, go to the website at ypareviews.com. You can buy Jeff's stuff at theestablishingshot.org. Okay, I got to get my masks ready for tomorrow.
All right,
All
my
right.
friend. Good luck
So,
tomorrow. Thanks for tonight.
all right. Thanks a lot, folks, and we will see you later. And remember to question everything.